Rejoice, the Lord is King. Today is one of the most honored and prized holidays in America, and it's a time when we honor our mothers and we remember families. A good time to remember families and get families together. And my guest today is my mother, Mrs. Hazel Corts. Mom, it's good to have you, and I'm glad that you could be here.
Thank you.
Well, you know, today I thought we would talk about not so much what you think mothers ought to be or do, but all of us learn by modeling. Modeling is one of the greatest ways to learn anything. So I want to know what kind of a model you had for a mother. My grandmother. Now, you raised 7 children, 6 boys and 1 girl, and that was a mammoth task in and of itself. But how many children did Grandma have? How many were in your family?
She had 8.
And so this family would stretch from like early 1900s to when did the last of you leave home? You probably...
I left home in 33.
You left home in 1930. So let's say the early 30s, 20s, and teens, the early part of the century is when we're talking about. She was mother then. Okay, what do you remember about your mother? What kind of a mother was she? What kind of a person was she?
Well, I guess usually most of us think our mothers were perfect. I hope so.
Yeah.
But religiously speaking, I like to start with that because she was a devoted Christian.
Yeah.
She trained us. She read the Bible to us. We didn't always get to have family prayer because my dad didn't agree with everything at that time, but he did later become a Christian.
But now that's interesting because a lot of women don't know what to do when their husbands don't cooperate. What did Grandma do?
That's true. She just did it on her own
right
without
on.
his cooperation.
So she took the lead in spiritual
Yes.
things if Grandpa wouldn't.
Yes. He never objected to having prayer in the home or going to church or anything. He went with us part of the time. But he didn't actually become a Christian until a short time before he died, for which we were thankful.
Sure.
But she did read the Bible to us, and, well, I think the example of the Christian life means so much because she always had a good spirit towards us. I mean, as far as disciplining was concerned, she tried to show us things from the Bible that would help us to show the right spirit towards each other.
Oh, she did do that. She would explain why she disciplined?
Yes.
Did she do most of the disciplining?
Yes, I believe she did most of it. Of course, my father was away an awfully lot. He worked in the oil field, went to work 4:30 in the morning, got home late in the evening. But the weekends, of course, were nice, and he did go to church with us, as I said, part of the time. But I can't remember of his ever disciplining us too much. Now, he did the boys more than he did the girls.
She was wholly devoted to the home, as I remember. I mean, the home was everything.
Yes. I always appreciated the fact that she taught us to cook, sew, do things right along with her. And I'm sure you can remember her home-baked bread.
Oh, yes.
That's
Never
what
forget
all our family remembers her
Yes.
for. And she was a very excellent cook. And I did not have a bought dress until I was 16 years old. She made all of my clothes. And, of course, then I wished I could have a bought one. Now I wish I could have a homemade one. I still can do it a little bit once in a while, but I'm thankful she taught me to do it.
Yeah, sure.
She knit and she crocheted, and she taught us to do those things also.
Now, what kind of a woman was she in the neighborhood? Did she have a lot of friends around?
Yes, she was a very good neighbor. She would give away her vegetables. She always had beautiful flowers, and she would take bouquets to the people. She waited on the sick. I can remember of ever so many little babies in the neighborhood that she took care of from the time they needed help, you know. She'd go over every day and take care of them until the mother was able to. She was a good nurse, too.
She just pitched in around the neighborhood.
There were so many things that she could do like that.
You know, that's great because young mothers they need in the neighborhood, they need a godly model to look up to, an older woman who sometimes when their mother can't be there, can be there to minister to them and encourage them.
Yes, that's true.
And help them.
And, of course, we didn't have the get-togethers like they have nowadays at that time, but it was just neighbor to neighbor. Neighbor to neighbor.
So you remember her as a godly woman, as a very good mother, one who disciplined, one who instructed.
Good homemaker.
A good homemaker, one who was a good neighbor, one who ministered to others and helped others, was always giving out. You know, consistency is so important. When I talk with young
Yes.
people, they like to know somebody stable. Do you remember that about your mother?
Yes.
Stable consistency.
I mean, if
She was
she
the
helped, if there were an illness in the home and she helped out, she would stick to it. She'd go there every day until she was sure that they were able to take care of themselves, you know.
She followed through on
She
things
followed
didn't
through
do.
on everything like that. Uh-huh.
How do you think she most influenced you? Now, you came along with your family from the mid-30s and the 40s and the 50s. You were raising your family. You were in a different social setting. You were in a different worldwide time. The economic situation was only gradually improving. But during all of those crises you faced with us, tell me about that. What do you, as you recall, what influenced you most from your mother? How were you most affected by her?
Well, I'm sure that all of these things, the religious part, the homemaking part, I'm sure they all had their effect on me. Even she stayed with me when I had my first baby and showed me how to do everything, and she was very helpful then. Later on, I thought she was, you know, getting a little bit old to ask her to do those things, but I could always call her and she could tell me what to do.
That's especially significant since all of us were born at home. None of us were born in hospitals. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you know, my impression of you as a boy was that my mother was a very hard worker. And you got that from her, I suspect, then,
Yes,
in the home.
my dad was a very hard worker, too.
So I remember when we had our hardest times, if you needed to, you went outside the home and worked. It was not a problem. If you had to, you did that, and often did that. But I can see, the longer you talk about her, I can see all those characteristics, how they just transferred over to your generation and to our generation. And that's fascinating because, you see, even the ideal that I have for a mother is really fashioned in the life of my grandmother, who was your model, who was my model, see. And as I look back now, I never thought of it quite that way, but she really made an impression upon me in that what she was is still the model that I'm passing on to my children as what I believe a mother ought to be. And that makes our modeling so very important, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
What are the greatest rewards or blessings of motherhood? From your vantage point, you just turned 73, and again, you have many grandchildren, you have 7 children, you have all of them still living in adult life. What are the blessings, what are the rewards at this vantage point of life?
Oh, there's many. I can't begin to name them. Just watching children develop is a tremendous experience. And seeing them overcome their difficulties and master them is just worth everything.
You have a chance to get the long view, don't you?
Yes.
You remember them when they were children. You see them go through the difficulties, the trials, college, all of that, getting started. Marriage, home,
families,
family.
and the wonderful grandchildren.
Yeah. So grandchildren are a great source of blessing, too, are
Oh, they surely are. You just see your children developing over again.
Over again in them. What, as you look at your children and you think about life's greatest blessing, and you said that the greatest reward was watching them develop and grow, how, if you had all grandmothers, you know, in say, Forsyth County, or let's take a 5-county region around here, if you had all grandmothers at one time, what would you say to them? How can they best encourage their children and their grandchildren? How would you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I think love is the basic thing. And I think without Christ in your heart, you can't love.
That's right.
Like you can with him. And he just helps us through so many difficult places, and helps the children through and helps the grandchildren through, and you see them overcome with his help, and it's just, well, I just praise him for what he's done for each one of them.
So God gets the glory. Maybe that's
yes,
the
he
greatest,
surely does.
Maybe that's the greatest
Maybe
blessing,
it is.
the greatest reward. You're listening to the testimony of a mother who's raised 3 college presidents right now. Perhaps no other mother in America can say that. And 2 ministers one daughter who's married to a minister and a school teacher and one lawyer. And Mother, I don't know how we could have done it without you. Of course, that's trite to say, but I mean working our way through college and getting through school, and we want you to know that we love and appreciate you. And God bless you on Mother's Day.
Thank you.
We'll be back right after this song by the choir.